So I have been working on revising a book I finished last year that I've nicknamed Project Fortune, and I've revised most of it, but there's this one part that I was just stuck on, and I was like avoiding it because I couldn't figure out how to fix it. So first I'm gonna just give a brief little intro to what Project Fortune is, because I haven't talked about it on this channel yet. So Project Fortune is a multi-POV urban fantasy that is somewhere between 160 and 170,000 words. It is on the longer side, but still well within the range of like the average fantasy book. Recently there's been a trend of like shorter books, but again, that's a recent trend. Typically fantasy books tend to run between 100 and 300,000 words. So if you take that whole word count into account, I'm somewhere just before the middle. However, there has been a trend of having shorter books. So if you compare that to what's happening now, the book is much longer than most books that are being published right now. But there's still books that are being published that are like the same length as my book that are doing well. So it'll be fine. So I had the initial idea for Project Fortune in like 2015 when I was a junior in high school, and I loved anything that was a fairy tale retelling. Still love it. Loved Once Upon a Time. There was this book series I was reading called An Unfortunate Fairy Tale by Shonda Hahn, The Lunar Chronicles. I'm not going to list every single fairy tale retelling but anyways, very into fairy tale retellings. So initially, I was thinking that this was going to be a fairy tale retelling. That was like my idea that's what I was thinking when I first had the idea for this story, like several years ago, like 9 years ago. I came up with the main cast of characters. I did some character sheets. I wrote a couple of scenes, and it was very much like YA fairy tale retelling, teen protagonist. Yeah. And then for like the next 4 years, I would just like take notes about this story. I would think about it, and I would take down notes whenever I had ideas for plot points or characters, or it should be this is what the story is going to be. And so the story evolved into something completely different over the course of 4 years. And then when I was a junior in college, I took a novel writing class for my creative writing minor, and I chose this idea as the one to develop in this class. And I wrote the outline and I started writing it. We only had to write like 30,000 words for this class because we were doing a bunch of stuff. We're in college, we have other classes, we have homework, we have jobs, we have whatever else we're doing. And so we were writing like 3,000 words a week and like reading and critiquing each other's work, etc., so on. And this, when I was in that class working on this helped me figure out kind of like more clearly the world building aspects that I was having trouble with, because I didn't know if I wanted it to be like that generic like medieval fantasy, vague setting that like most fantasy books are set in, or if I wanted it to be different, because there was technology, but then I was trying to figure out, well, how advanced is the technology? Like, are we talking 1920s or 2020s technology, like whatever. Anyways, that helped me figure out a lot of what I wanted the world building to be and the story to be. And then I got busy in college, so then I kind of wasn't working on it. I was thinking about it all the time and taking notes about ideas or changes or stuff that I wanted to happen. And then during the pandemic, I started working on it again. And at this point, the story had completely changed again from what I had worked on just 2 years or a year, whatever, prior, when I had worked on it in the class. Because now I had a very clear idea, okay, this is the world, this is the story, this is what's happening, these are the characters. And I think it's just really interesting to see how vastly different the story is from the initial concept idea that I had 9 years ago to what it was 4 years ago to what it was when I finished it last year or a year and a half ago. They're like 3 very different stories. Second version and then the current version are more closely similar, but still very different stories. Like it's not a fairy tale retelling. It's not YA, it's new adult. The characters are not teenagers anymore. They're in their like early to mid 20s. Anyways, the book is done. The book is finished. I've been going through revising, fixing spelling and grammar mistakes, placeholders that I had. You know, you're writing and you forget the name of a place and you gave it a name a couple chapters ago, but you can't remember it, but you don't want to stop to go look it up because you're in the flow. So you just write some random, my placeholders would be like the thing. So it would be like, oh, you know, so-and-so was going to, and then I would write in like all caps, like city name, like the city name or person name, like whatever it was. I just put in all caps what the thing was. Just going back, filling those things in. When I first started writing the book, I was writing chronologically, but then I would get writer's block in certain points. And so then I started skipping around and writing out of order, which was just an interesting experience. And I could make a whole video just talking about, because wow, what a hassle it was to put it together. Because I had the book was spread across like 4 different documents, but it was, yeah. If I were ever to do that again, I would be more organized about writing out of order. There's like a few scenes that I had skipped writing, or it was just like bullet points of like, this is what happens in this moment, and then I went on and was writing. So I've just been filling in these different things, and pretty much done, except for this awkward thing that's this moment in the book. Essentially, it is a transition scene or several scenes, and it's like a montage. There's one happening with each character so that you kind of get like a brief summary of what's going on with each one of them during this montage. However, it was very clunky and it didn't fit, it didn't flow. Initially when I was writing it, I was afraid that it would be boring. I wasn't afraid, I was concerned it would be boring. And it's not boring, it's confusing. It's confusing because it's 3 montages happening back to back from different characters' point of views, but even though you know, like as the reader, okay, we're going from character to character and these things are happening, it's very confusing, the timeline of events that's happening in this sequence. And I've tried so many things to fix it. I tried incorporating bits and pieces into the previous and the following chapters with the characters. I tried just cutting it out altogether. I tried putting each one in their own chapter for the characters. But yeah, so far it was just not working, and I could not figure out how to make it flow and make it piece together. It was just like throwing off the sense of time in this part of the story. And this transition point was really important because all 3 of the main characters are all traveling from like the world they knew into this new unknown. It's not a crossing the threshold scene, that's already happened. Or I guess you could say it's a second crossing the threshold scene. or sequence. I never thought about that that before, but I guess it is. It's a second crossing the threshold. Like maybe the first one was a soft crossing, and now this is a hard crossing. They're like traveling cross country, on the run, doing all kinds of things. But basically, the destinations where they end up redefine everything about their characters. It redefines how they perceive the world. It redefines what they think about the problems facing the country at that time. It redefines their goals in what they want to do and how they want to go about doing it. These like transition moments of them traveling from this before and then to these destinations that will be important as you continue reading. I think it needs to be in there. It was just, I couldn't figure out how to make it work. It wasn't working because the way I have the book structured is it rotates POV, point of view. Anyways, whatever, in order. So it's the same ABC, 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 ABC. And pause. Let me go back a little bit. So something I do when I am trying to figure something out, or I'm having a problem with a scene, or something isn't working. So like I'm reading something or I'm writing something and I might be having trouble, or I am not wanting to work on it, I take that as a sign that like, okay, something is happening here, that something needs to be fixed. If I am like procrastinating writing something and I don't want to write it, or I'm not having fun writing it, probably means it's boring, or like it's like it doesn't need to be here, like it's not important, it can get cut, like just jump into the next actions that are happening. And so at first I was like, maybe that's what it is, like it's traveling, but there is stuff that's happening in the montage. It's like just little snippets of things. So I'm like, no, it wasn't that. Same thing with writer's block. If I'm like struggling to write a scene, then there means there's something wrong happening with the scene. It's not me, because I know I can click out a couple thousand words real quick, but if I'm like really struggling, then that means there's something wrong with the scene, and so I need to change something or do something to make it work. Like trying to push through this thing is not gonna make it happen. So something that I do when I'm trying to figure out how to fix something in a scene is I'll skim over whatever it is I'm writing, and I'll have like bullet points of like, okay, this is what I need to happen, or this is what it needs to be, or this is what I'm trying to accomplish with this, or like this is why this needs to be in the book. And so I'll have my reasons, I'll read over or skim over the material, and then I'll like keep it in the back of my head as I go about doing things throughout the day, like while I'm at work, or while I'm doing chores, or I'm taking a walk, or whatever I'm doing. I keep it in the back of my head, because the subconscious is a powerful thing, and it'll figure stuff out while it'll piece things together for you. I've been procrastinating working on this for a while because I had been trying all these things, nothing was working, and so I was just letting it. So then I put it away, and I wasn't working on it at all, and I was just working on Project Rose. But I was like, no, I need to figure out this scene, because I've almost finished revising this book. Like it's pretty much done. It's fixing this scene and then rewriting one other scene, and then I like it's finished because I already revised the end of the book. I just had to fix the beginning of the book, because I wrote the beginning of the book 2 years before I wrote the end of the book. So there was like stuff had changed, and I had to go back and fix continuity errors, plot things that I had changed, characters that had changed, or names of stuff that I had changed, whatever. I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep it in the back of my head while I'm doing stuff, and I'm just gonna let my brain figure it out. I don't know how to explain how I do this, but I can like hold multiple things in my mind. So I was making a conscious effort and decision to keep this in the back of my head. So even if I was doing other random stuff, it was back there, and I could, I don't know, not feel it, but I could, it was there, it was in the back of my head. And then I just had like a light bulb moment, and I was like, aha, duh, Nia, I know how to fix this. So this is something that I already know it, but I'm constantly having to remind myself of it as I'm writing. And that is, I can do whatever I want with my book. I don't have to follow these arbitrary rules that either exist or that I set out in the beginning. I can do whatever I want. I can change my book to fit the needs of my story. And so what I decided to do with this scene was remove it as like a chapter, and it's just like a part, like a little section in the book that will be like almost like hard transition between, like, this is there's not like part 1 and part 2 in my book, but there kind of will be when I rework this part, where you'll have the beginning and then there's going to be this interjection where it's this montage scene that will be in third person omniscient and will just kind of include all of the characters, whereas the rest of the book is first person. So each chapter, when you're in that character's head, it's in first person. So just so that I can do this transition moment, because there's several things that are transitioning. The characters are traveling from one place to another, and it's taking several days. Like, it's not like we're there now. It's taking several days. Well, it's a couple of weeks. And where the story starts, it's like on the cusp of spring is starting to come, and like winter. It's still technically winter, but like the seasons are starting to shift, where you're having like some, like, one day it might be more wintry, the next day it might be more spring, or the morning it's like winter temperatures, and then the afternoon it's like spring. So it's like when that battle that happens when the seasons transition. The season has transitioned fully, and so it's now it's spring. These characters are in these new places. Like, there's stuff happening, or there's a lot of things that are transitioning, I should say. But yeah, so I can do whatever I want in my book, and I can rewrite this in this way, and this will make it fit. Because as soon as I had the idea, immediately all of these ideas popped into my head, and I was like, oh, okay, I can do it like this, and this is what I can, and blah 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 blah. And I got really excited to write it, because I was like, okay, now the juices are flowing and my brain is braining. But yeah, so that's just some advice or whatever. You can change your book whenever you want to fit the needs of your story. Just because you have it structured one way in this part of your book doesn't mean you need to continue it the whole time, or that you can't have these these like snippets or sections that are different for whatever reason. As long as it makes sense for your story and your book, like, you can do whatever you want. People will split their books into parts, and sometimes in between their parts they'll have like little prologues or things like that to each section. Or people will change point of view in the middle of a book. It might be, oh, here it's third person omniscient, and now we're in first person close. First person is already close, whatever. Or vice versa. It was in first person all the way here, and now we've switched to third person omniscient, or third person close, or I'm not saying second person. We're not including them in this. Second person can leave. I'm sorry, second person, I don't like you. It's your book, and you can do whatever you want with it. So if you need to change something, or you reach a point in the book where you're like, okay, now it needs to shift because that's what the story calls for, you can do that. You can break the rules whenever you need to, if it's what your story requires. And that's all I'll say on that. Okay, I'll be back after I write it. It'll probably be a different day though. I did it. So something that I was having trouble with, which I mentioned already, was there's this transition moment, and I wasn't sure how to work it out, to figure it out, to do it, whatever. I did it! I woke up at the crack of dawn because I'm jet lagged and I keep waking up like so early in the morning. And I was like, well, I'm awake. So I started writing it yesterday and I was like outlining it and figuring it out. And I was like, okay. And then I started like trying to piece the things together of like what I wanted to include. So I just started writing sections of it and I wasn't sure what order it was going to go in, but I was like, whatever, I'll figure that out later. So this morning I woke up and I was like, I'm awake, so I might as well write. So that's what I did, and I did it. I finished it. I put all the pieces that I wanted in it. I reorganized it and made it make sense. And I was like, this is perfect. It's not like a super long thing, but again, it's a transition thing and it's very important, but I figured it out. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. This has been on my mind for a month, trying to figure out how to fix this section. So much so, like I said, I was procrastinating working on it because I did not know what to do with it. And now it's done. And I figured it out. And now I can just keep reading forward like I was doing before. I was just reading through the book, fixing, mistakes like grammar things, or maybe I'm going to rewrite this part, or anything that was missing, or filling in placeholders, like maybe I forgot, the name of this place. So I just wrote, location, insert location name here, or whatever, fixing stuff like that. And now I can just keep doing that, and I can enjoy being like a reader of my book with like my author hat is still on. But my glasses are from the viewpoint of a reader now. Like, okay, does this make sense? Did I forget something? Do I need to mention this? Did I blah, 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 blah. I'm so happy. I'm so happy that is. Did you just hear my stomach growl? Whatever. I have to leave for work in like 33 minutes. I went over. I woke up really early and I was like, okay, cool, I'll write until this time. But then I got into the groove and I was like, I'm almost done. I'm so close. But yeah, so now I've got like 30 minutes to get ready for work. So that'll be fun. I think I can do it. My hair is braided. When my hair is braided, it takes less time for me to get ready. I can do this. Goodbye.